The Adrianople Group will be holding the online event History and Future of African Charter Cities. For more information, check the link in the description. Welcome to the Geoeconomics podcast. I'm your host, Guillermo Hernandez, and today I will be speaking with Maria Camila Moreno. Maria is Executive Director of the AZFA, a non-profit organization that is dedicated to protect and promote the special economic zones across Latin America. Without further ado, let's jump right into the conversation. Welcome to the Geoeconomic podcast by the Adrianople Group. I would like to start saying thank you to Maria Camila Moreno. She is the Executive Director of the AZFA. Welcome to the podcast, Maria.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very glad to be today with you.
I'm very glad to have you. Can you tell us a bit more about what is the AZFA?
Perfect. The association was created 24 years ago by a group of entrepreneurs and managers of free trade zones around LATAM. And this group of entrepreneurs grew and grew until in 2011, it was established in Bogota. So right now we have affiliates from 25 countries, all Latin America and the Caribbean, and even Spain, because it's Iberoamerica, in fact. So we have representatives and represent free trade zones in 25 countries, and we have two main goals. The first one is about the promotion of free trade zones, so people know about them, and to find potential investments to come to the free zones. That's the first main objective. And the second main objective is to defend the free trade zones. As you know, we have fiscal incentives, we have a differential income tax, and also zero VAT and zero tariff. So these sometimes create a kind of challenge between the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance. So our goal is to promote it and to defend and to show all the benefits of the free trade zones for creating direct employment, exports, and global value chains, and more foreign direct investment into the countries.
I see. What is the profile of an AZFA zone? What requirements should a zone fulfill before becoming a partner?
Well, we have, in fact, 4 kinds of partners in the association. The first one is a free trade zone, and I'll explain you what kind of free trade zones, but it's a free trade zone. Second, we have ministries of trade within the association, which has given us a really big relevant association, having ministries. The other category is we also have associations of free trade zones within our association. So to give you an example, the Association of Free Trade Zones of Costa Rica is part of our association. The other one, it's consultants that are part of our association in order to give advice to the free trade zones in different topics, especially legally. And the other, and the last one is users, the companies that are inside the free trade zone. So these are the 4 categories within the association and our ecosystem. And for the free zone, we have industrial free trade zones, like American Free Trade Zone in Dominican Republic, which is dedicated to medical devices, or PISA also in Dominican Republic for mainly a cluster of medical devices. But we also have free trade zones for services. So you might have heard about the World Trade Center, like these big buildings of services. Well, in Uruguay, the World Trade Center is a free trade zone, and it's part of our association, and is only focused on services. So we have these 2 kinds of free trade zones within our association: industrial and for services.
I see. Awesome. And as far as I understood, companies within SAMs can also be partners. So you're growing off this ecosystem between different companies that give services to special economic zones, like consulting and all that stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have some that give advice for consultancy in legal terms when there's a legal modification in any decree or law. And also we have some consultants that give for in this particular moment that we're living for COVID-19 for how to attract more foreign direct investment or how to do a new plan, marketing plan for your free trade zone. So our consultants also help the free trade zones in these new strategies.
I see. Perfect. All right. This is a topic that has been on the news for many months now, and I would like to know your opinion. How has the novel coronavirus impacted the Iberoamerican special economic zones?
Well, for sure, it has impacted everyone with no exception, and it has impacted the free trade zones in terms of international trade. Also, one of the biggest impact, and this is very interesting, is that as you know, when you are in a free zone, is a geographical delimited area. So the companies that are established within the free trade zone should be inside the free trade zone. That's what the law says. Now we have this COVID coming to our lives. Everyone is going home to work. And as I just mentioned, we have the case of free trade zones that have services. So they cannot go to work, but they could work from home. So how to deal between the law, the current law of the free trade zones, and this new challenge? Well, in record time, many countries, Guatemala, Colombia, Uruguay, El Salvador, Honduras, in Dominican Republic, in record time, they had to adjust the law so that the companies for services could operate outside of the free trade zone. So this is one of the main impacts and challenges that we saw with the COVID-19 at the beginning of the pandemic. Some are still working from home, and when this is over, for sure they will come back to the free trade zone. But this is one of the main impacts that we have seen. And as I mentioned, of course, in international trade, it has been reduced. However, there has been some positive things, and is that, as you may know, there are many textile companies within the free trade zones. So especially in Haiti, Dominican Republic, Honduras, El Salvador, many of these textile companies are doing masks and all these outfits to protect from COVID. So the good thing is that the companies, even though we're facing many challenges, we are reinventing ourselves.
I see. I see. That's very good to hear. Do you see that zones are adapting very well to a post-coronavirus world on trade? How do you see the trade evolving in a post-coronavirus world?
Well, Guillermo, that's an excellent question, and that's what we are working right now in the association to create this new vision of the post-COVID free trade zones, special economic zones. Um, there's one big challenge, and that we are working together with the different ministries, and is that to incorporate the e-commerce in the free trade zone. Right now, the legislation is not available to or allows to do e-commerce. So companies like Amazon or Alibaba that we would love to have in our free zones, we can't because because the legislation does not allow it. And I don't know if you remember that Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, said in one of the World Trade Organization summit, he said that the containers will finish eventually. So, and
Yeah,
that was like 2 years ago or three. And in that moment, we were like, oh, he's exaggerating. And now
yeah,
with this pandemic, we realized how sure he was. So now one of our main goals is to flexibilize the law for allowing companies to do e-commerce within a free zone. That's one of the main things that we're seeing post COVID. The other thing, and that it's already implemented, but with this COVID, it started to be a boom, is the 3D printing. We have incubator in the free trade zone of Barcelona, which is already printing. It's an 8 with HP 3D printing. And last year we went and visited, and we were amazed, and wow, this is the new, like the future, and it's all about printing on demand. So okay, this is going to be a little bit disruptive because you don't have the idea, then manufacturing, the assembly, distribution, warehouse, retail, and then to the end user. You're just printing it, and then it goes to the end user. So what to do with all these logistics? So this is one of the things that we were last year, as I told you, visiting, and we were really amazed. But we still saw it like, oh yeah, this is the future, but kind of, like on a side, yeah, it could be. Well, after this pandemic, many free trade zones are taking this job serious. So I know about one concrete free trade zone that is implementing one incubator. There are many others that are starting with their business plan. So there's going to be a boom of 3D printing within the free trade zones.
Extraordinary, actually. I didn't know that. I'm glad to know that those opportunities are sparking. Maria, will you say that governments are collaborating, or let's say being flexible in terms of regulations to help special economic zones during this coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, that has been really amazing because the governments have really helped, because they have really, really understood the power of special economic zones. So they're collaborating, and as I told you, they did these laws for the working from home very fast. So they're really helping the special economic zones to fit in this new reality. But what is more important is the potential that you're seeing in the free trade zones. So they realized that meanwhile the rest of the economy was closed, the special economic zones were still working. We're the first in adapt for these sanitary protocols, because you have an industrial park where you have many people coming inside, coming outside, but the protocols to come inside the free trade zone, you can become more strict. So you have a city within the city, and you have the protocols, you implement everything super fast, you are still working, your workers have all the sanitary protocols. The Ministry of Health can come and check the companies very easily that you're doing all the protocols. They are the ones that, as I told you, they're not producing textiles, t-shirts, but now they're producing masks. So this has been amazing, and this is a golden opportunity, because I'm not saying that governments didn't see the free trade zones as important. They saw it. They knew it was very important. But I feel that with this pandemic, they realize how important all the potential of these economic zones to promote the economy, to continue with the economy. Meanwhile, the whole country is closed. They are still working. So it's a really, really important tool for the governments, and they're taking it really seriously, which we're really happy with this.
All right. We have seen a huge evolution in the special economic zone industry in the last 10 years. Being that we're in 2020, if you have to guess, what will you say will be the evolution of this industry in the next 10 years time? For example, in the last edition in Barcelona of the World Free Trade Zone Organization Summit, we were already talking about the World and Trade 4.0, you know? So
Yeah.
we are basically getting ready to start having things like the Internet of Things inside special economic zones. And how do you think technology and all of the things that are happening right now will end up affecting special economic zones in the 10 years time frame?
Well, it's going to be revolutionary, no question about it. I think the framework will be everything surrounded of safe and free. So let me explain. Safe in terms of no illicit trade at all. So we're going to be the most secure places in the world to do business. Safe in terms of like all the control of the trucks and of the merchandise that comes inside and outside automized with the Internet of Things from the point that it's produced until it is inside the free trade zone. So with this technology of Internet of Things, all face recognition, that actually some of these things that I'm telling you are already in place. But my dream is that in 10 years, all of the free trade zones will have it. So it's face recognition for the employers to come inside the free trade zone. All Internet of Things within the container coming from point A, country A to country B within the free trade zone. The 3D printing, all free trade zones will be having an ecosystem of 3D printing. And also we're working, actually it has been a little bit slower than we thought, but it will come, which is blockchain, the technology of blockchain. So we will incorporate these technologies of blockchain for all the security of the merchandise from point A to point B. There's actually one project going on between two free trade zones. It's confidential. I cannot tell you right now the names of the free trade zones, but you're doing the first pilot of blockchain from one to another one in another country using this kind of technology. So I will expect that all free trade zones will start to incorporate blockchain technologies. So that's for the safe. And for the free, we incorporate this new term, which is going to be free of virus. So it's going to be safe in the sense that there's going to be no virus within the free trade zones for all the protocols that are going there. And it's going to be free of taxes and free of virus. So they're going to be safe and free. So if you understand the free concept, no?
Yeah, totally. I'm I'm really excited to see how new technologies are going to transform this industry for a better. This is sort of a shifter in terms of the mood of a conversation, but there's people who don't like the special economic zone industry or the model, so to speak. Those who criticize the model, what would you say to them in defense of the special economic zone?
Well, Guillermo, that's part of my job, almost every day of my life, because people always like to see the negative things and not the positive.
I imagine.
So, so I've been working, and I realized I've gone to many different conclusions, which are the free trade zones in our continent, from America, from the US, and the whole Latam, and even in Europe, are very different from the ones in Asia. So every time that something happens in a free trade zone in Asia, for example, the case that, I don't know if you remember, when there was an accident and there was a fire in one of the textiles industries in Bangladesh, and it was in a special economic zone. And then the whole news were about how bad
Yeah.
the working conditions were in free trade zones. And then
Hmm.
the International Labor Organization saying that free trade zones were not complying the labor standards. So one case in Asia affects the reputation of all of them. Actually, Guillermo, I would like to highlight that we just finished our statistics book of this year, and we have an average salary in Uruguay of more than $3,000 per employee in Uruguay per month. In average, it is higher, the salary in free trade zones, than within the national territory. So don't tell us that we are not complying with the labor standards when we actually are doing the right thing. So I think that is lack of knowledge from some institutions that they're talking about without knowing, and just like hearing about some spur cases around the world, and then they impact the whole world. Another thing that I've noticed is that there are many articles talking bad, like academic articles talking bad about the free trade zones, and there are not many positive. So what happens with this is that if you're going to write another article, then you go to your bibliography and you check all the articles that have been written, and the majority are negative. So what is going to be the result? Another negative article. So we need to start writing and giving to the academy more tools for them to write all the good things about the free trade zones. And to finish this question, we were, maybe you remember last year, there was a very negative report from the OECD talking that free trade zones are used for illicit trade, and it was calculated by a formula. And the World Free Zone Organization and me myself, I went to them and talked to them and told them, like, okay, like, how did you get these numbers? What are the the sources? And they explained me, but again, it's like with some spur cases that the rest, it's very, the results are going to be negative because they take only the negative. So I was very kind with them, and I told them, look, if I'm sitting here with you, like putting my face, it's because I know that my free trade zones are not doing things bad. It's the opposite. We're creating international trade. We are creating employment. You can check all how the tracks and all the transparency that we have. And then they started like, okay. And I start to tell them, okay, we should do, for example, they should be with costumes. And I told them, okay, but for example, in Colombia, costumes is within the free trade zone. Ah, really? We didn't know. Okay, so we should do, and so many things, Guillermo. And I was like, we are already doing it. We're already doing it. Next point. Okay, we already do it. And they were very surprised, and they're starting to change. But it's sometimes very like a long job to start telling the other people how good you are, because many years ago, you have only bad reputation and bad articles. So we're starting to clean the name. And also, it was very useful for us that last year I had the opportunity to help to draft the World Investment Report from UNCTAD, from the United Nations Conference for Trade and Development. They did a chapter only for special economic zones and talking only good things about the special economic zones. So we're starting, you see, like, baby steps, and working with all these organizations, UNCTAD, WTO, OECD, International Labor Organization, the customs organizations, that we're also telling them to update the Kyoto Protocol, which is the framework for the free trade zone. So we're doing this more and more to have a better knowledge of the free trade zones.
In terms of how competitive zones are, how could Iberoamerican zones become more competitive? What tools do you think could be helpful? Maybe public-private partnerships could help? And what do you think about how competitive zones right now are in Iberoamerica, and how could they evolve?
So I feel that right now we're pretty competitive because we have incentive in income tax. We have zero VAT and zero tariff. So for global value chains, or now they're called regional value chains, and for all these nearshoring and reshoring strategies they're talking about, I feel that we have a really good offer to give for the companies. Now, how to be more competitive is to be more is more to fast track, to have more fast track procedures, because right now we have a lot of paper procedures, and to talk to customs and send this paper and the other is still a lot of paper. So we need more e-government, we need fast track, and of course the technologies that we were talking about, that how we will visualize this in 10 years is that everything will be digitalized. I mean, for the entry of the truck, and then it's weighted, and then it comes immediately inside. Everything will be faster. But right now, I feel that there are many procedures that are still too operative and too slow. So that will be. And regarding the public-private partnership, that's super important. In Dominican Republic, which is a country where free trade zones really work, to give you an idea, 56% of the total exports of the country come from the free trade zones of Dominican Republic. And they have, it's called in Spanish, Consejo Nacional de Zonas Francas, which is like a national committee of free trade zones composed by the private and by the public. And that has made that the free trade zones in Dominican really work. So what has happened? Countries like Colombia, actually yesterday was the Free Trade Zone Congress of Colombia, and they announced that that in Colombia there will be a national committee of free trade zones, exactly with what you said, with a partnership between the public and the private.
I see. All right. Are there any regions in particular you think the zones in Iberoamerica should be following in terms of best practices? Like, have you seen practices in other side of the world that the Iberoamerican special economic zones should copy or follow? For example, practices applied in Asia?
Well, in Latam, definitely the leaders are Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Uruguay. And Panama is starting to get more points and best practices also. So that will be my best in Latam. In the rest of the world, I was really impressed by Tanger Free Trade Zone in Morocco. I will definitely take it for best practices. And also, well, very impressed, and every time I say it, people are a little bit shocked. But the special economic zone that they are developing in Cuba, it's really amazing too. And it's the same developers of Tankermet in Morocco. So that's also a very, very interesting case study, the one in Cuba.
Extraordinary. I really have to dig more information into that special economic zones, do more research.
Yeah, no one knows, and like they have to keep with a low profile, and it's very controversial if you talk about it. But I was there last year, and I was completely amazed. They already have 50 companies within the free trade zone. Well, the special economic zone. 50 companies from Spain, from Vietnam, from Korea, from Netherlands. So they already have a port. So within the special economic zone, they have a port. It's 500 square kilometers. It's a huge area. They're doing an old infrastructure, and I'm not saying you like small companies. They're big companies that they're constructing a pharmaceutical one, and beer, like for beer. It's more for the internal market, not for export, because they have the embargo, so it's very difficult to export. But at least you're creating a huge ecosystem of companies for the internal market. So that's a case that I was really surprised.
I see. All right, and this will be the last question. For 2021, we have various different forecasts. Some people are very positive about what could be coming on next year. Some people are very negative in terms of economic forecast. What will be your vision for a trade and a special economic zone industry in 2021? It's gonna be a boom or a bust, especially making emphasis in Latin America.
Oh, well, they always ask me more years, but yeah, next year it's I think it's going to be a really, really good opportunity if the free trade zones really do their job of marketing a strategy for all this reshoring, nearshoring that we're talking about. So if they start now looking, and I know many companies and many free trade zones that are doing in their business plan, okay, which are the companies that want to leave China? Which ones will go back to the US, but maybe it will be more profitable to be in a free trade zone in Latam. So they're scoping all these companies that they could attract. So I definitely am 100% convinced that it will be a boom for the free trade zones with new companies, more investment, and more recognition around the world that is the best place where to invest.
I would really like to thank you again, Maria, and the AZFA team. It has been a wonderful conversation, really. Thank you for being in the podcast.
Thank you. It's the first time I do a podcast, so I'm very happy to have done this with you.
Went very, very well. Thank you again.